Now that Nintendo has officially confirmed that Virtual Console will not be happening on the Switch, where does the platform stand? How does this affect or not affect its future? And what do we think will ever potentially maybe happen with these classic games? That's what we're about to discuss. What's going on, everybody? It's Zach from Switchforce. Gabe is here, and initially this video was very cheery, and it was about how, man, that NES games catalog, as revealed by the online service, opens the door for Virtual Console, and then a couple hours later, Nintendo says, hey, it's not happening on Switch, and here we are. So, Gabe, no VC on Switch. There still is a lot of back and forth on the internet about, like, well, could they bring this? Could they not bring this? How will it eventually work out? But I think the more important conversation is, like, how does no VC and the current state of classic games affect the Switch?
Minimally, right?
Right. I think so.
Yeah, like, the Switch has been thriving, and it's been doing very well without it, so I don't see why that would necessarily change. Of course, there is that small sect of people that, you know, are saying, I'm going to sell my Switch now because I am not going to get Virtual Console. And, you know, that's okay if that's your sentiment, I guess. But, yeah, I think those people are such a minority when it comes to the Switch. The experiences that we're having are new and fresh, and shout out to Splatoon 2. And I'm happy with those. And, like, honestly, if I want to play old games, there's other places I can play them. So I'm not that torn up about this personally.
Yeah, I honestly, you know, I feel like the sentiment has to be, like, people around our age might be a little bit down because there was this hope and sort of this vision that we'll be able to carry this Switch with us, and it would include our favorite NES, SNES, and 64, and maybe even GameCube games, and that was such an awesome idea. But I feel like for most players, it probably matters very little, and especially for, like, the younger generation who Nintendo seems to want to tap into extra much this year, I don't know that they care at all. I feel like indie devs have to be pretty pumped about this because it opens and clears the eShop for much more of their stuff, and in general, like, look, the Switch is going to continue to sell at an incredible pace with or without this. So in the grand scheme, very little impact. But more on an individual and personalized basis, you know, there is this conversation about, like, oh, are they just getting rid of the name? Is it merely a removal of the moniker, and we're still going to get eventually Mario 64 and Mario Sunshine? And right now, like, the only facts we have and can go off of are that NES games are coming to the online subscription service. And at one point, they said SNES games would be included. They did not say that yesterday in their info dump. Does it eventually happen? Probably. But I do not foresee this being a situation where, hey, we're just getting rid of the name VC and we're still going to put these games up on eShop.
Yeah, I differ with you a little bit there, where it wouldn't surprise me if it was something like that. Where, like, the games are still available somehow, and they just
for sale, like, individually?
Possibly. I wouldn't, like, 100% close the door to that. I don't necessarily think it happens, but I understand people's, like, pipe dreams. Let's call it a pipe dream because it's all it is for now. Like, people really want this stuff to happen, so they're trying to justify it in some way in their head. And I don't think it's beyond Nintendo to at some point sell these things, just not call it Virtual Console. And, like, a tiny, like, a 0.5% chance, like, in my heart says, dude, one day they could, like, completely change their mind on this. I'm not saying it's gonna happen. I really don't think we're ever gonna get Virtual Console on Switch. But it's not something that a company's never done before either, where they just, like, backtrack on something. So
yeah, I feel like the specific acknowledgement and announcement or conversation to explicitly say, hey, it's not happening, is because it's not just a name change, but it is a philosophy or a mindset shift. And I saw some very, I feel, smart analysis this morning saying that maybe this actually is a better business move. Perhaps Virtual Console was not as lucrative as we imagined, and maybe outside of the hardcore Nintendo nostalgic, most people were only buying, you know, 0, 1, or 2 games. And now by tying all of their classic stuff to the online, you greater increase the chance for subscriptions. You're already, you know, offering online play, cloud saves, discounts, so there's value there. It's at a cheap price point. If you can get majority of your user base on board with this $20 a year plan, perhaps long term that makes more money than piecemeal selling Virtual Console. And maybe this was more of a strategic decision that they were going to shift from earning dollars via individual sales of games to an online subscription service that incorporates that. So technically, for a hardcore NES fan, this is a better deal, right? For the price of 4 NES games, you're getting access to a 20 plus growing library of NES games, and if that one day does include SNES, which I think that's at least SNES is a pretty fair assumption, right? Like, then that's a good deal for the hardcore, and maybe for the the non-hardcore, the non-Nintendo nostalgic, maybe this still brings dollars into Nintendo's pockets.
Yeah. This sentiment is one that I feel sort of weird about, because at least from what we know about the NES ones, all these things are going to be like upgraded to a point, right? At the very least with the online gameplay. We spoke about this a little bit earlier, just off air, but like, that's not free. Like, these games just, like, there's not a switch that they can just like flip and say, hey, the game's online now. Like, there's stuff that has to go on behind the scenes to make that happen, right? In Virtual Console, you're just running a ROM off emulation, and you're selling like the game that you already have. Like, you don't really got to do anything for the most part. So I wonder what those costs are. And yeah, like, technically maybe you're like making more people pay, quote unquote, but, and I could be wrong here. I personally am paying for the online service for the ability to play online, and not for the NES thing. If the NES thing isn't there, I'm still like paying this like very low amount just to be able to play online. So like, yes, it's added value, absolutely, and again, for a certain person, it's awesome, but I don't know that they eventually like make more money. If NES wasn't part of this and they just sell them piecemeal, and again, even if they don't sell a ton of them, you still end up making money because people are going to pay for the ability to play online for Smash Brothers, Mario Kart, whatever else may be coming down the pipes that is very online multiplayer focused.
Yeah, and I guess then I look at it from the perspective of, okay, if they are not putting it under Virtual Console, then to me the logical assumption is that they want to incorporate it in the online, and that they feel that that is a stronger offering and eventually leads to more dollars. And then if you're going to take the approach that, okay, you could still charge the online without the inclusion of classic games, then to me, I have to imagine that at some level, this indie-dominated eShop to them is more important than a Virtual Console-dominated eShop. And yes, I understand if it was structured appropriately, you could easily have both. Why not do it all? If people want this, why not do it? But remember, they aren't making decisions at the flip of a coin or out of vengeance for, we want to not do what the fans want. So you got to think of this from like a business perspective. And I cannot discount the fact that NES Mini, SNES Mini were very successful. They have clear patents and plans for eventual other consoles being minified and sold that way. And yes, some people say like, oh, they're not the same market, it's different. But at some level, they must feel that some of these factors matter. Because again, if it was in their best interest, they would be doing it. I firmly believe that.
Yeah, I mean, no argument there. Again, and I hate going back to this sentiment, but I'm okay with like, hey, sell me a Game Boy, sell me a Game Boy Advance like mini, sell me a N64 mini, sell me a GameCube mini. I'm okay with that, because at that point they give you like a solid number of the games that you're going to play anyways for a higher profit margin for them. So again, business wise, makes total sense. That's why I'm personally not very.
And it's a better deal for the gamer. Yes, you don't get to piecemeal pick, and yes, you may not get all the games you want. We are seeing other publishers incorporate their own collections, a la Sega Ages, so maybe some games that you were looking forward to will come via those methods. And then, look, to me, and this is just like a Zach thing, the allure and idea of Virtual Console and the allure and idea of playing those games is always far greater than the actual minutes I spent playing those games. The concept of having all 3 Donkey Kong countries and all the Mario Bros on my Wii was a far cooler concept, and it was nice to see them on my screen, but I still spent more time playing the new games. And I don't know what percentage of the population feels that same way, but I kind of align with you, Gabe, of like, I don't think this is that big of a deal, because hey, we're getting Mario Tennis Aces. Hey, we're getting Fire Emblem. Hey, we're getting Super Smash Bros. Hey, we're eventually getting Pokemon. Like, that's where my time is invested. And that is why I bought a Switch. There are all these other methods, all these other ways. And if it makes better business sense for Nintendo and for its partners and for indies, then I'm on board with this. I want to shift the conversation to, what do you think is going to happen? There's all these thoughts and theories about, do they bring all the other consoles to the online subscription service? Do they just slowly roll them out separately? How do you foresee this playing out in terms of classic games, obviously not under Virtual Console? How will they exist, or will they exist at all?
I think SNES is for sure happening at some point in some fashion, right? Probably as a part of this online thing that they're doing, eventually start adding SNES games, excuse me. So I think that is all but assured. After that, it's so up in the air. I was telling you earlier, like, I wouldn't be surprised if there was still a way to play like Mario 64 on my Switch at some point somehow. I don't know what shape that takes. I don't know if it becomes a remake. I don't know if they do end up selling it piecemeal through a different banner other than Virtual Console. Like, I have no idea. But I wouldn't be surprised if we're still able to play this thing somehow. And again, maybe that's just me being hopeful, because I do sympathize with the people that are really into having these games available. And I'd be lying if I didn't want them available. But like you, I don't think that's where I would spend most of my time. It's just more of a very like cool thing to add to what is already like my favorite console. So I'm trying to sympathize with those people and maybe say that the door's not 100% closed, but I don't know. It's probably time we start like letting go of this a little bit, because Nintendo's given us every indication that they're not interested in doing that, at least for the time being, and the time being is going to be like years. So
yeah, I mean, I definitely do. I sympathize as well. It sort of sucks. Again, I'm someone that started on the NES, so the idea of having them all handheld was a glorious one, especially if it was going to incorporate GameCube. At this point, I do not see any scenario where they just start selling them piecemeal. Like, hey, guess what? We're throwing Mario 64 on the eShop. To me, that seems very strange. I feel like it's going to be a part of the online. I mean, look, unless there is some major mid-cycle, UI change or mid-cycle program change, I feel like this is a thing where they slowly incorporate more and more NES games and eventually SNES games into that online subscription service, and then maybe the rest is just sort of left. And if companies want to come and say, hey, we want to do our, we want to throw our GameCube game with some, touched up graphics onto Switch, great. And, we're seeing things like that happen with the Sega Ages. There's talk of them bringing, the Dreamcast titles to the platform. And obviously it's not a Nintendo console, but it could be done. We're getting Okami on Switch, which is coming from multiple generations ago. So there is the space for other publishers to do it. Personally, I don't see a world where Nintendo just all of a sudden snaps their fingers and decides to start selling Mario 64 and Mario Sunshine. Maybe they have plans to eventually collectionize these games on a cart, or to redo Mario Sunshine in the way that they've, HD'd Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. I don't know. But in my opinion, I think it goes NES and SNES. I just don't know how long that takes. Like, if we're going to rock NES through 2018, maybe they bring in SNES 2019. Hey, N64 hits 2020. I don't know. That just seems very dicey to me.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say while we're just on the topic of old games, look, NES Classic and SNES Classic, both are very cool little collectibles, right? But you own both. When's the last time you played either?
Oh yeah, the launch week.
Yeah, I bought an SNES Mini and I never opened it. The concept of playing these things is very exciting. And again, having the ability would be great for those of you that would play it a ton. But I'm speaking for me and Zach only. As humans, us. Neither of us is touching this stuff. I had an unopened SNES Mini in my closet for months and months. I just gave it away because I was like, hey, I'm never going to play this thing. Right. So, yeah. Yeah.
For us, it's definitely a case of the allure is far greater than the actuality. And I think that there are plenty of quote-unquote replacements in the form of games that harken back to those eras, games that are of those eras, and then new games that aren't anything like those eras but are just as or more worth your time. So, look, there's plenty to play. It's not going to be a problem. The eShop will be, fruitful with lots of cool titles, and the store shelves, hopefully, after E3, will be primed and ready for a lot of good stuff. But let us know your take in the comments down below, how you feel about this, how you think it affects the platform, and where you think they eventually go, if anywhere, with the rest of their library. Maybe it just isn't as important, isn't as lucrative, isn't as big of a deal as we think. It's interesting to see how much Xbox has invested into their backwards compatibility program as of late, but is that more a thing because they don't have new titles? I don't know. I think if I had to wager, I would say that the overall industry-wide emphasis on back catalog is maybe not as big of a deal as the hardcore like to think it is. So with that thought, we will leave you. Make sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all the latest and greatest from the Switch as we work our way towards E3. New stuff is being unveiled. Who knows if there's more on the horizon. Make sure to follow us on Twitter and Discord to stay up to the date. Links in the description. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Have a fantastic day, and until next time, for myself and Gabe, Switch Force, out.